The day I moved into 1237 Willow Lane, I thought I'd found my slice of suburban paradise. After years of cramped apartment having my own backyard with a pool felt like I hit the lottery. This was my dream home, everything I had worked for. It was a modest two-story house with cream-colored siding, a wraparound porch, and that pool, the kind that sold the house to me instantly. I thought I was going to settle into a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by people who were just like me, trying to enjoy their lives. But right across the street, there was her. Margaret Fletcher. You know the type. She was in her mid-50s, had that bleached blonde hair that screamed, "I want to talk to the manager." And she wore a neon green tracksuit that was about 3 sizes too small. Every time I looked up, there she was, peeking through her window with binoculars. I thought, well, maybe it's just a coincidence, right? Maybe she's just curious, no harm in that. Wrong. By the second day, I knew her name, Margaret Fletcher, and she had already made herself my worst nightmare. She marched right over to my front door, smiled too brightly, and informed me that there were certain standards in place here in Willow Lane. She told me that neighborhood harmony was important, and that if I planned on staying, I'd need to follow some guidelines, some written by the HOA, and some by her, of course. Her tone was polite, but it carried an undertone of, "You're new here, and you'd better fall in line." As soon as she said it, my skin crawled. It wasn't just about following the rules, it was about her making sure everyone knew she was in charge. And it didn't stop there. By the end of the week, she had left me 3 notes on my door about my music. I had been playing some jazz at a reasonable volume while unpacking. Apparently, that was too loud for her delicate sensibilities. She even had the nerve to complain about my lawn maintenance schedule because I mowed the lawn on a Tuesday instead of the weekend. And then she had the audacity to question whether my Honda Accord was suitable for the neighborhood. According to her, it wasn't the right aesthetic. I could feel my patience starting to wear thin, but I smiled and waved. I wasn't going to let her get under my skin. That's the thing about people like Margaret: if you give them an inch, they take a mile. I learned that the hard way with my first interaction with her, and it only escalated from there. The next thing Margaret took issue with? My pool. She would station herself at her window, binoculars in hand, tracking every time I went for a swim. She even started timing how long I stayed in the water, commenting on my choice of swimwear to anyone who would listen. By the end of the first month, she'd made up rumors about my pool being unsafe for the neighborhood kids, claiming I wasn't maintaining proper chemical levels, though I had professionals testing it every month. But Margaret wasn't having any of it. She even started telling people I was probably using suspicious chemicals in the pool. This woman was relentless. The tipping point came one afternoon when Margaret decided to get her sons, Ryan and Nathan, involved. They'd accidentally kicked their soccer ball into my yard, and Margaret would follow them over, her saccharine smile plastered on her face, to retrieve it. But that wasn't the point. The point was that she was using her kids as an excuse to inspect my property. She'd scan the area for things to complain about, like she was the neighborhood watchdog. One day, the boys started making comments about my swimming technique while Margaret stood there, pretending to be shocked, but clearly encouraging their behavior. I couldn't take it anymore. I started documenting everything, every interaction, every complaint, every time I saw her peeking through her blinds with those binoculars. I installed security cameras, recorded our conversations, and even started learning about the local HOA bylaws and ordinances. I wasn't just going to let her get away with this. Margaret had gone too far, but I was playing the long game. I wasn't going to fight fire with fire. No, I was going to fight her with facts. And what I found would blow her out of the water. About 2 months into this nonsense, I finally got a breakthrough. My friend Jerome works in the county assessor's office, and he'd been quietly helping me research property records for the whole neighborhood. One Friday afternoon, he called me. His voice was full of surprise, but I could hear the excitement in it. "Dude, you won't believe this," he said. "Margaret's running an unlicensed daycare out of her house. She's taking cash payments from parents and claiming it as babysitting to avoid taxes. But that's not all. She's been doing renovations without permits including adding a bathroom that violates building codes. Oh, and she's been claiming disability and senior citizen exemptions on her taxes. She's saving thousands of dollars a year fraudulently. My blood ran cold. I was looking at everything Margaret had done, and it was worse than I imagined. Not only was she a controlling, invasive neighbor, but she was a criminal as well. My heart raced as I organized all the documents Jerome sent me: photos, tax records, permit violations, and prepared everything to file complaints with the county assessor's office, the building department, and even the IRS. But here's the thing. I wasn't going to use any of this unless I had to. I didn't want to escalate things. I just wanted her to leave me alone. So, I kept my cool until that Saturday morning when Margaret decided to escalate things herself. I had started draining my pool that morning for regular maintenance, draining, cleaning, and refilling the whole thing. It's a big job, but the weather was perfect, and I had all weekend to get it done. About 3 hours into it, I heard her voice from across the fence. She was on the phone, ranting and raving, and I could tell she was working herself into a frenzy. What I didn't know was that she had already called the HOA and was preparing to escalate things to the city code enforcement office. And that's when the phone call came through. Margaret had called 911. She was claiming I was destroying community property, that I was draining my pool and dumping dangerous chemicals into the storm drain. She was exaggerating and fabricating the situation so badly that I had to laugh. First off, I was draining my pool according to the manufacturer's specifications and directing the water to my own lawn to be absorbed naturally. Second, I had already spoken to the city about how to properly drain a pool. But of course, Margaret didn't care about the truth. She was out for blood. And then, she made the biggest mistake of all. She started embellishing her accusations. She claimed that I was running some kind of illegal business out of my house, and that I was somehow endangering the neighborhood kids. I walked outside, waving cheerfully at her, pretending I didn't know what was going on. I waved at her and said, "Good morning, Margaret. Beautiful day for pool maintenance, don't you think?" She turned bright red and started pointing at me while she was still on the phone with 911. "He's taunting me," she yelled into the phone. "This is harassment." I couldn't resist. I pulled out my phone and started recording, making sure I had evidence of her completely absurd behavior. It didn't take long for the sirens to approach. 2 police cars pulled up, and I walked up to meet the officers. "Good morning, officers. I'm Darius, and I assume you're here about my pool maintenance," I said, completely calm. The lead officer nodded. "Mr. Eric, we received a call about possible illegal dumping and noise violations." I smiled politely and said, "Would you like to see my pool maintenance records? Or perhaps my environmental compliance documentation?" "I've got everything here, officers." I showed them the records, my permits, and the correspondence with the city. And I wasn't finished yet. I also had evidence of Margaret's harassment. As we walked to the backyard, I could hear her in the distance, still yelling, "Why aren't you arresting him? He's destroying everything." I knew this was going to be good. I turned to the officers. "I think you should know a little more about Margaret. She's been running an unlicensed daycare out of her home, among other things. She's been using the HOA to harass me and other neighbors for months. And she's claiming tax exemptions she's not entitled to." The officers stopped in their tracks. Margaret's face turned pale, and she went silent. The officers looked at her, then back at me, clearly stunned by the turn of events. I showed them the documentation. I had everything from her unlicensed daycare to her tax fraud, and you could see the disbelief in their eyes. "We'll need to look into this," Sergeant Williams said. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. Margaret, who had been so sure of herself, was now on the defensive. She had no idea what hit her. The neighborhood was finally free. And as I stood there, watching Margaret being escorted off by the officers, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just about winning. It was about making sure people like Margaret never got to dictate the lives of others. And for the first time in months, I could enjoy the peaceful life I'd moved here for. My neighbor's people who had been too afraid to speak up finally had their voices back. And the best part? I had all the proof I needed to show that justice had been done. But the fight wasn't over. And it won't be until everyone is free from people like her. What do you think? Was I wrong to stand up to her? Or is it time more people started documenting and fighting back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.